welcome to Song for This Day. And if you've been here before, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. And if this is your first time, well, you know what they say, you always remember your first time. So if you waited patiently on summer days for the good humor truck to show up, if you were plaguing your mother to buy you those special Tom McGann twist shoes so you could do the twist better, and if you know what a Carmen Gia was, well then Song for This Day is going to make you very happy and smile. And if all that sounded like a foreign language to you, stick around anyway, because you're going to have some fun. Now, you may have noticed that in this particular episode, I'm in the kitchen. So we're going to be doing some cooking. We're going to cook up a rock and roll stew today. Not actually a stew. We're going to be on the sweeter side of the rock and roll stew, but we're going to make something that will turn out to be A, either really delicious, or B, something you'd just like to throw away. And we won't know till we get to the end of the show. But before we begin, I've got a question for you. Who out there has any idea who Bert Burns might be? Okay, he's not my next door neighbor, but he is very big in the music business. And we're going to get to Bert, but not till the end of the show. In the meantime, we're going to start with Rock and Roll Stew. I'm guessing many of you remember the song by Traffic, Rock and Roll Stew. Wasn't a big hit, but it got some good airplay on FM radio. And Traffic, of course, was one of those early supergroups. You remember back then, after the Beatles came along, we had John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Before that, we had no idea who was playing the music instruments on any record, because it was always faceless and nameless musicians in a studio. But now, we knew who the band members were, and we paid more attention. And what happened then is, when those bands broke up, they started a whole new concept known as supergroups. And here we have one of the early supergroups, Traffic. And Traffic, it was actually comprised of Steve Winwood, who of course came from the Spencer Davis group. And then we had Dave Mason, who came from the Hellions. And then we also had Chris Wood. Chris Wood came from a group called Chicken Shack. And they got together and they became Traffic. Of course, as all things might happen, they broke up too. You'll remember Steve Winwood, of course, he was the lead singer in Gimme Good Lovin', which was the Spencer Davis big hit. And interestingly, he was only 16 when he did that. Think back to what you did when you were 16. I'm guessing it wasn't fronting a rock and roll band that had an international top 10 song. I know I wasn't doing anything even remotely close to that. Anyway, the other two members who came from the random groups were they were big in the UK, but they never made any indent on the US charts. But so like all good bands, Traffic broke up. And in a reverse of the cliche, it turned out that the individual musicians were actually greater than the sum of their parts. So we had Dave Mason, who would go on and have a great solo single songwriter, good alliteration, huh? Career, and also be a very much in demand studio musician, and he played in so many big bands over the years as they toured and as they recorded. And then we had Chris Wood. Chris Wood played with a variety of people. He played a bunch of instruments, and he would play with, folks like George Harrison, folks like, many, many different albums you'll find Chris Wood's name on in the late 60s. And then Steve Winwood, he went on and he formed himself yet another super group. He hooked up with Rick Gretsch and Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker. And they became, for about 10 minutes, a band called Blind Faith. And then Blind Faith broke up. And that meant that we had more musicians filtering out into the wonderful musical world, and we had Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker connecting with Jack Bruce, and they of course formed the big supergroup, Cream. And that gets us started with our recipe, because the first ingredient in our recipe here is going to be cream. And it's going to be heavy cream, just like Clapton, Baker, and Bruce were. They were heavy cream too. So we're going to add, and this is all carefully measured, so please get your notes out, pen and paper, and write this down so you'll be able to replicate this when we get to the end. We're going to put that much cream in. Did you get that? Okay. Let me put that back so it stays well. Now, Cream, they had 4 albums in 3 years, and they were such a super group that, I mean, they just turned the world of music upside down. You had a combination of rock and blues and jazz and psychedelics, and these guys were, well, they were the top of the pops, so to speak. They were the cream of rock and roll. But as all groups happen around, they also broke up. And they broke up because Eric Clapton, he read a review in Rolling Stone, and the review said that Cream, the band, had become repetitious and boring. And the sad part was, at least for Clapton, he said, wait, I agree with that. We are repetitious and boring. But more to the fact, he was also concerned because Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker, they did not get along well at all. Clapton wasn't a big fan of either of them as well, except musically. But Baker and Bruce, they would fight all the time. They would fight and actually damage their instruments, sometimes on stage. And so one of the other reasons, aside from the Rolling Stone review, that the band broke up is that Clapton was, well, he was intimidated and frightened by these two guys constantly fighting. So they went their separate ways. And Cream was no longer. But it's our first ingredient. It sets the base for this delicious drink that we're going to make up here. And I should say at the outset that this drink has not been approved by the FDA, so I give you that caution. But next up, we need to add some strawberries, because we have to have some nice, good, delicious, fresh fruit and flavor. And we're going to add a little strawberry alarm clock. Well, okay. We're just going to add strawberries because alarm clocks do not blend well when you put them into the blender. So we're going to put in this much in terms of strawberries. Are you counting? Okay, I think that'll, one more. There we go. All right. Now, of course, that leads us to the Strawberry Alarm Clock, the band, the Strawberry Alarm Clock. And they, of course, had that wonderful song, Incense and Peppermints. And it wasn't until that very moment in 1967 that we even realized that incense and peppermints went together. But the Strawberry Alarm Clock, God bless them, they told us that they did. And you know what they also told us? That incense and peppermints were the color of time. Check your watch and see if that's right. Look at the clock. I don't know, incense and peppermints. It was a big hit for the Strawberry Alarm Clock. And you may think of them as a lightweight one-hit wonder, but they actually had 5 charting hits. And they had Incense and Peppermints, which is a #1 song, as I said, for and stayed on the charts for about 11 weeks. And it sold over 1 million copies. And they had an album that actually sold 2 million copies. So at that moment in 1967, strange as it may be, Incense and Peppermints and the Strawberry Alarm Clock were a big deal. In fact, they were such a big deal that they were on a lot of TV shows. They were on American Bandstand, they were on the Steve Allen Show, and they were actually the first band on the first episode of Laugh-In. I guess that means something. And interesting, their drummer, Rick Soul, he was a member of the dating game, one of the 3 bachelors that the female contestant was going to pick from. And guess who she picked? The rock and roll drummer. Anyway, the Strawberry Alarm Clock. It, hang on a second, we have to get down here. They sold over 2 million albums. My screen has frozen. Bear with me here. Well, we're going to move on to the next ingredient here. Hang on. And that's going to be peaches. We're going to jump ahead a little bit for those who are working with the graphics. I apologize. We're going to go with peaches, and we're going to go with pumpkin, and we're going to go with apples. That's not apples, that's cream. I need to alphabetize the refrigerator there so I have it in the right place. So again, this is carefully measured out when you do this at home. We're going to put in peaches. Yeah, about that much. And then we're going to put in some applesauce, because apples are too hard to prepare in the limited time we have here. About that much. Sounded pretty good? And he says, looking for a spoon. I saw them here. Bear with me. I think they were here. And some pumpkin. I did this myself earlier, and I found a pumpkin, and I cleared it out, took all the seeds, and there it is. We'll put a little more pumpkin in. There we go. All right. So that may actually remind you of a song where we have apples, peaches, and pumpkin pie. And that song, of course, was by Jay and the Techniques. Jay and the Techniques, they had Apple Peaches Pumpkin Pie, which was a big top 10 hit. And then Jay and his Techniques recorded a second song, and it was actually the same music, but they just changed the lyrics, and they called it Keep the Ball Rolling. If you listen to them, they're very similar indeed. Jay and the Techniques, they came from Allentown, Pennsylvania, a town which of course would be immortalized by Billy Joel with his song of the same title. And there were actually a number of other Jays in the music business that you might be familiar with. We had Jay and the Americans, we have Jay-Z, we had Jam Master Jay, we had Jay Sean, we had Blue Jay Way, and I think I probably beat that to death, didn't I? Anyway, the song Apple Peaches Pumpkin Pie was actually initially offered to Bobby Hebb. You might not be familiar with the name, but you will be in a second. Bobby passed on it. But then he would go on and write another song that was called Sunny. And Sunny was a huge hit, top 10 hit, happy, jaunty, poppy tune. And yet, Bobby Hebb said it was inspired by the death of his brother. I actually saw Bobby Hebb live. He was one of about 8 or 9 groups that opened for the Beatles when they played their second Shea Stadium concert. And it was interesting to listen to because as the acts on the schedule got closer to the Beatles, the sound in the stadium got bigger and bigger and bigger. Until finally when the boys arrived, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, you could only hear one sound, and that was the sound of everybody in the stadium screaming. But I did hear Bobby Hebb, and he sang Sunny, and I didn't even know back then that he, in fact, had written the song based on the death of his brother. So what do you think we should put in next? I think we should put in a little lime. Lime juice is good in everything, really. Mostly, though, it's good in margaritas. There we go. A little lime, just enough. And we're going to add some coconut milk. Indeed, coconut milk. carefully measured, just enough. That's enough. You got that? Coconut milk. And so this will be, of course, no surprise, but what that's going to do for us is get us to the lime and the coconut and take us to the Harry Nilsson song, Coconut, which was written by Harry. Reportedly, he wrote it in his car in 15 minutes. You put the lime in the coconut. Now, Harry's a very interesting guy, but the song, it got some tremendous exposure. Coca-Cola used the song in one of their commercials. I'm just going to let you know here. Get ready. Stand up, I'm going to sing. You put the lime in the Coke, you nut. I swear, that was a Coke commercial. Foolish as it may be. But I'm sure Harry enjoyed the royalties he got from it. Anyway, Harry was a very unique personality. He had originally started out writing songs, and he decided he was going to do what up until that moment was unheard of. He was going to do a mashup of Beatle tunes. And he took the song, the Beatle tune, You Can't Do That, and he slowed it down, and then he also incorporated 18 different references to Beatles tunes in that song. In the background, sometimes he sang snippets of it in the song itself, 18 of them. Now, perhaps as a result of that, the Beatles hearing that song, in an interview, the boys were asked, who's your favorite group? Who you listen to all the time? And John Lennon said, without hesitation, Harry Nilsson, even though he didn't know him. And of course, that put Harry into the world spotlight. And the question became, who is Harry Nilsson? Well, Harry Nilsson, he was a singer-songwriter who had a knack for writing catchy lyrics and tunes that caught your imagination right away. And he had an amazing voice. He had a voice that one critic called the greatest pop music voice in history. That may or may not be true, but if you listen to the large library that Harry left behind, I think you would agree that he had a several octave range with his voice, and he could really sing anything whatsoever. And he should have been a household name, but he also refused to tour, which of course limited Harry's exposure when people didn't see him tour after listening to him with all the music that he had written. Now, Harry actually was a singer-songwriter, and he won 2 Grammys for songs that he sang. But ironically, neither of those songs were songs that he wrote. He won a Grammy for the theme for the controversial film Midnight Cowboy, Everybody's Talkin', which was written by Fred Neil. And he also won a Grammy for a song, Without You, which was written by Pete Ham and Tom Evans. Their band, Badfinger, had actually recorded the song before that. Badfinger, of course, being probably the unluckiest band in the world. We'll get into that in another show, probably. Harry, he apparently was a hard partying son of a gun. And if you took any interest in comments made by some of his storied drinking partners, like John Lennon, and Monkey Mickey Davis had mentioned in the documentary about Harry, he said, when Harry showed up at your door and said, hey, come on, let's go out for a drink, Mickey said, you were never sure if you were going to get back in a couple hours, in a couple days, or a couple of weeks. Harry was an interesting gentleman. Sadly, I'm not in my own kitchen. If I was in my own kitchen pretending I was cooking, I'd be drinking wine right now, and this is, of course, just water, indeed. All right, what should we add next? I think we should add some cranberries. A delight, cranberries. Little round berries, and they're related to blueberries and to huckleberries. I'm sorry, I had to say that. That gets me into one of my favorite lines in the movies. From the movie Tombstone, we have Doc Holliday, who is played by Val Kilmer, and he's about to engage in a gunfight with the fastest gun in the West and the nastiest man in the world. And he identifies himself with that gentleman by saying, "I'm your huckleberry." I never quite understood what that meant, and I'm sure the guy he was fighting was a little mystified as well, too. But there it is, "I'm your huckleberry." And apparently, it was important enough not just to me, because who am I, but to Val Kilmer, because that is the title of Val Kilmer's autobiography, "I'm Your Huckleberry." The Cranberries for today, those cranberries, these cranberries, they're from Belfast, Ireland, and they were one of the biggest artists in the 90s from Ireland, and one of the biggest artists in the world, really. And the band started out, and they recorded an album called "Hey, Everybody's Doing It, Why Can't We?" And it didn't really do that well. It wasn't a big racing up the charts, and it was their fourth album, so it wasn't like they were newcomers to the music world. But it wasn't doing so well. And then they went out on tour, and they were opening for a band called Suede. And in that tour, they came to the attention of MTV. And MTV liked them. And so they threw them into regular rotation. And as a result of MTV, the Cranberries became quickly big and successful and well known. And so the tour that they were on got reversed. And Suede then opened for the Cranberries, the now very popular Cranberries. Sadly for the Cranberries, in 2018, their lead singer and primary songwriter and lyricist, Dolores O'Riordan, was found in a hotel room, and she was unconscious and unresponsive, and eventually determined that she had died. And the autopsy revealed that she had actually drowned in the bathtub as a result of severe alcohol intoxication. The Cranberries, they'd sell about 40 million records, and of course their career would end, essentially, once they lost their lead singer and primary songwriter. Dolores O'Riordan died at the age of 46, and at that moment, she was the wealthiest woman in Ireland. Okay, here's some cranberries. We have some cream, we have some lime and coconut, and we have some strawberries. Now tell me that doesn't sound appetizing. Okay, it doesn't, really. So I think what we're gonna do now is add a little spice. We need some cinnamon, right here. Now, I don't know about you. I really didn't know much about cinnamon. I knew it tasted really good. Mix it with sugar, you put it on French toast, you put it on toast, you put it on anything, it tastes really good. But apparently it's been around for centuries, and the Egyptians actually used it for embalming and also for perfume. And it originated in the Middle East, and for centuries, actually, the Arabs who were importing it would refuse to tell anybody where it came from. There were actually wars over cinnamon, not this one, but cinnamon back in the day. And it became a very important spice to actually possess. So check your cabinet and see if you have cinnamon. It might be worth a lot more than you think. All right, I want you to remember this name, Johnny Cymbal. Remember where he's from, Johnny Cymbal? Mr. Bassman? Okay, I'm gonna put a little cinnamon in here, because cinnamon is a good spice that adds taste to everything. We'll put in that much. You measure that one too? Okay. So cinnamon. Cinnamon was a big hit for Derek, singularly named artist. And how many of those do we know, really? You know, Derek, Madonna, Bono, The Edge. I guess that's 2 words, right? Anyway, Derek recorded Cinnamon. He also wrote and produced the song. And it's a great tune. Happy poppy tune. All right, the lyrics, if you're a little weird, they may be kind of suggestive, but that's your own interpretation on that. But he wrote it and he produced it because he had had many, many years in the business doing that. He had written songs for Gene Pitney. He had produced stuff for many other artists, but he did this on his own, and it was a big top 10 hit. One of those songs that when it comes on, you immediately smile, you remember kind of some of the words, you sing along, it ends, and boom, it's gone right out of your head. No more Cinnamon, no more Derek. Well, it turns out that Derek actually was Johnny Cymbal. Mr. Bassman, Cinnamon. See that connection? Me either. It didn't really make that much sense. Both good songs, though, Derek and Cinnamon. Anyway, we got some cinnamon in there, and I think, you know what we need now? We're going to put in just a little bit of honey. And I say that because our honey is going to come from that song by Bobby Goldsboro, Honey. And it's just so damn depressing. So we're just going to use a little bit of it. Now, it's said that when Bobby Goldsboro recorded Honey, that he did it in one take. And I've always thought the reason he did it in one take is he couldn't listen to it any more than we could. It's a lovely song, but it's about a guy whose wife is dying. That's enough honey. I measured it carefully. Honey. The song was written by Bobby Russell. Now, Bobby Russell, in a world of, I don't know, musical anachronisms, he also wrote The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia. And if you'd like to have some fun with that, you need to go check out the pilot for Song for This Day on this channel, where we have a little fun with that song and a couple of others, because the lyrics in The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia are ridiculous. Anyway, so we have Honey in there. Interestingly, Bobby Goldsboro and Honey were nominated in 1969 for a Grammy, but they didn't win. They lost to Little Green Apples. Guess who wrote that? Bobby Russell. So it's a good year for Bobby Russell, all around. He had a #1 hit, Honey. As depressing as it was a #1 song for 5 weeks. Oh my gosh, we listened to that for 5 weeks. All right, I think, what do we have left here? All right, I'm gonna throw it in the blender and mix it all up. And then we're gonna add the very final ingredient. And you may think this is unusual. We're gonna add some ice cream to it. And we're gonna add some vanilla fudge ice cream. And you of course know where that's gonna take us. But we can't resist doing that. Vanilla fudge, it's so creamy and delicious, striped with that wonderful fudge. And it's gonna wind up inside of this and mix it all together. The Vanilla Fudge, a Long Island band who started right here in New York, and they did the unthinkable. They took songs that were popular and reworked them in a way that was completely unimaginable. And they started with the Supremes' #1 hit, You Keep Me Hanging On. And they fudgicized it. And when they did it, it sounded like a funeral dirge. And the first time we heard it, it caught our attention, we paid attention to it, and then we listened to the lyrics and we said, wait, that's not the Supremes. They didn't sing it that way, but it worked. You Keep Me Hanging On by Vanilla Fudge. And you'll remember the break in the Supreme song where Diana Ross says in the spoken word, and there ain't nothing I can do about it. Well, when Mark Stein, the vocalist and organ player in Vanilla Fudge, when he gets to that line and expresses the absolute crushing passion of having just lost everything in the world that means anything to him, you can actually feel the pain. He does it so well. It's not just, and I ain't nothing I can do about it. You know that there ain't nothing he can do about it. So the Vanilla Fudge. They would go on, of course, and fudgicize other songs as well, too, like Eleanor Rigby and a couple of other tunes as well, and wind up in many annals of being the first people who actually created the heavy metal category with You Keep Me Hanging On. All right, hang on. I'm going to get some Vanilla Fudge, and then we're going to mix it up. Yep, it's in the freezer. and it's slippery. We're going to put it in. I'm going to throw it on the blender, and then I guess I'm going to be the first person to try it. What's your guess? Good, bad, terrible? A little vanilla fudge. That should do it. All right. The next sound you hear is going to be probably terror. All right, blend it for just about that much time. Did you get the timing down on that? Have a glass here. I'm actually going to try this. Rock and roll stew. While I'm trying it, though, Bert Burns, you remember him at the beginning? Anybody know who he was? He was born in New York, in the Bronx, and then sadly, as a child, he suffered from rheumatic fever. And that, of course, damaged his heart. And much like his contemporary, Bobby Darin, he was going to live a life that he knew was going to be implicated severely by the fact that he had a damaged heart. And he knew, just like Bobby Darin, that his life was going to be short, and he wanted to be sure that he was able to do everything he wanted to do in life before he passed away, which happened when he was 38. Interestingly, Bobby Darin passed away when he was 37. Now, all right. So Bert Burns, he was a producer and a songwriter. Some of the songs he wrote, I need to go to my list here. Twist and Shout, Piece of My Heart, Cry Baby by Garnett Mims. One of my favorite rock and roll names, Garnett Mims. Love it. Here Comes the Night, Hang On Sloopy, Baby Let Me Take You Home by the Animals, Cry to Me, Piece of My Heart, 25 Miles, and Everybody Needs Somebody to Love. He produced many of those as well, too. He also produced Make Me Your Baby, Baby Please Don't Go, Brown Eyed Girl, Here Comes the Night, Baby I'm Yours, and Under the Boardwalk. He was 38 when he passed away. That is an incredible resume. So, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I guess I'm going to have to do this and see just how the rock and roll recipe came. All right, it may not be delicious, but it's not that bad. I'm not going to recommend it. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for riding along. I hope you had a good time. I had fun doing this. And be sure and check out the previous adventures here on LTV, Song for This Day. Also, I do a daily blog. If you're interested in starting your day with music and some fun facts, much shorter than this, but quick facts, send me your email to songforthisday@gmail.com. That is, songforthisday, no spaces, @gmail.com. And we'll include you on the daily send. No obligation. It's completely free. Thanks for riding along.